Now, there's some other countries where they treat drug abuse as a health problem. And when you do that, you have a much better situation. It's better for the people abusing drugs, and it's certainly better for the communities and their families, and even better for law enforcement, because law enforcement's not wasting all this money chasing these people around.
America is a nation always at war. One looks at what the illegal drug trade has become and the rampant use of substances like marijuana, including the limited legalization of same. Ask a member of law enforcement what the next step should be in this war, and I guarantee many of you will be shocked. We're going to do just that. Welcome to MidPoint, former Los Angeles Police Department Deputy Chief and now a member of the board of the group, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, or LEAP. Stephen Dowling joins us. Chief, thanks so much for being here today.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, we just heard a colleague of yours, Jack Cole, talked about the benefits of legalizing drugs. However, of course, there are those who do not think it's a good idea. I want you to listen up. Here's Idaho State Representative Donna Pence.
I think the culture of Idaho is probably not quite ready to do that yet. I'm not at all in favor of changing our laws.
Is it not fair to say, Chief, that while it might seem a good idea to some, this is just something that the country is not ready for in so many ways?
Well, I think that the polls indicate that the country is ready for it. Well over 50%, especially marijuana, agree that it's time to legalize, regulate, and control. And as far as the drug war goes, the polls show that well over 80% of the nation believes that it's time to find a new policy, that the one that we're using isn't working.
What about those who would say, and of course you've heard a lot of these arguments before, that you legalize marijuana, it's just a slippery slope because there are those who say marijuana leads to this drug and leads to this drug. And what you're doing is, there are people who will say, wait a minute, Chief, you're talking about keeping people stoned on a 24/7 basis, just like buying cigarettes? That's a tough thing to sell.
Well, you know, I wouldn't call it a slippery slope, but I would call it a step in the right direction, because already we're seeing in Colorado that handing the regulation and control to government rather than the gangs and the cartels is benefiting society. You look at the results of first 6 months results in Colorado, and the sky is not falling, and the control of the substances to minors is 100% in compliance. Crime is down. Taxes are coming in. They're starting to build new school programs. So everything in terms of that particular drug with that particular model seems to be working. And if we start to recognize that drug abuse and drug addiction is a health problem as opposed to a criminal justice problem, I think that we're going to have a much better community, and folks in Idaho might be able to see that and break out of their what she called their cultural bubble.
Okay, now I'm going to hit you with a couple of things you just said, because this is what, and there's people out there, you've talked to them before, they're going to hear two things you said. It will benefit society, and it will make for a much better community. There are those who will fire back, wait a minute, how can it benefit society if you're under the influence of a hallucinogenic or some sort of a drug that doesn't leave you in a normal state of being able to carry on business, conversations, whatever, to work? And how can you make a better community then if you've legalized something and you know that you can legalize it and say that people over 18 are the only ones who can get it, but you know kids are going to get their hands on it sooner or later?
When you regulate and control, you also have laws that prevent people from driving while high. We have alcohol. People are high on the streets, but most are not. It's handled in a reasonable way. When I say it's going to heal the community, in the last 40 years, we have imprisoned 40 million people. We have taken fathers out of their homes. We've taken mothers out of their homes. We put children into foster care, which has driven the children to the streets. We've branded people with the scarlet letter of a drug offense when they can otherwise be a functioning member in the community. People with drug problems, people have legal drug problems, prescription drugs, but they function, They go to their jobs, they go to the kids' baseball games. So what I'm saying is when we take the stigma of a drug offense away and look at abuse, recreation is one thing, abuse and addiction is another thing. It's a health problem. It's not a criminal justice problem. When we start doing that, when we start recognizing that, we will have more people employable. We will have more homes together. We will have more fathers going to Little League games.
But we will also be a nation which will be more stoned.
I don't agree with that. The reason I say that is right now I believe that the level of marijuana use it will remain about the same whether it's legalized or not. We've seen that, and we're not seeing the sky fall in. Sure, you have a few stoners, you have a lot of alcoholics too. So there's a balance. People, when you legalize something, you also alcohol is a perfect example. We've taxed alcohol and tobacco, and with that tax money, we've put out drug education programs. We've seen a reduction in tobacco use, a very significant reduction because we have these kinds of programs. In Colorado, they've funded a drug education program right along with funding the legalization of recreational marijuana. So it's a balance. And I don't think that you're going to see a society any more stoned than it is today. But I think you are going to see that there's going to be a movement away from alcohol towards recreational use of marijuana. And I think we're already seeing reductions in crime, especially in terms of in-family violence.
Chief, I only got 15 seconds left. Are you one of those people who believes that marijuana is no worse than tobacco or alcohol?
I am. It's been scientifically proven that it's no worse.
By the way, I can't get away without asking, have you ever tried marijuana?
I have not.
Will you?
I've never tried it.
Will you?
No, I won't. I'm not attracted to it.
Okay. Just making sure because you know somebody's going to ask. That's always the next
Oh,
question.
sure. Yeah.
Chief, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll talk to you again. Pleasure.
You're sure welcome.
All right. Later on this hour, news call goes to Oklahoma for the case of whether a beheading is just a despicable crime or an act of terrorism. And after the break, another drive-by Sunday with the news programs Dish the Dirt sometimes being shoveled by the guests. And boy,